Betsy has some serious stories being in the tech world where there's hardly any black folks, but I mean, come on, Betsy, there's probably even less people that look like you. You gotta take it off mute though.
Yeah, definitely. I've been in the tech industry for 7 years now. The company I work at now is probably the most diverse company I've worked for. And in terms of Black, Brown, Asian population in the company, which is amazing for me. I'm no longer the only Latino woman in the room. But throughout most of my career, I have generally been the only Latina person in the room. And I've never, I wouldn't say for the most part, I would say my experience in the tech industry has been great. It's an amazing industry. A lot of the very smart people, very driven people work there. So I feel like I'm around my peers. I'm a hard worker. And it's been great. But, you know, definitely throughout my career, there have been microaggressions, you know, people saying things like, oh, I've just been waiting for you to go hood, you know, and I'm like, what does going hood mean? You know, why do you think that I'm going to go hood? And it's just like this idea that Latino people are cholos or, you know, are gangsters. And it's just really funny, like growing up in my family and having the parents and family that I have, for someone to say that to me, it just feels so foreign. And then, like I mentioned, the spicy Latina comment earlier, and then having to pull my manager, who's my manager, into a room and explain to him why that's not okay. Why calling me a spicy Latina in an open environment for other people to hear is actually truly unacceptable, because it just demeans my opinion immediately rather than just hearing what I have to say. And then it would also welcomes other people to belittle some of my opinions if they hear my manager saying that to me. And then, you know, there's been a few comments about like what you wear. I'm very hyper aware of the way that I present myself in the workplace. I don't wear anything that's form-fitting. And I see people wear these outfits. I'm like, oh, I would love to wear that to work. But I know that if I wore that to work, it would probably, it just wouldn't sit the same. People look at me differently depending on the way that I present myself in the workplace. And that's something that I'm very hyper aware of.
Thank you, Betsy. I'd like, to get someone else's, anyone really, comments on more detailed information regarding colorism, what that looks like, because for those of us on the call who are not Latinx or Black, you know, it's a generalized concept, but we'd like to hear what that actually looks like, or what the attitudes are.
To talk about my experiences in the workplace as a Latina. First of all, my parents are entrepreneurs, so my dad always raised me to be my own boss. But it's kind of hard to do that when you are fresh out of law school. So I did spend some time working at a firm. I was interviewed by 2 white men. I had a friend that worked there. She was their token Black girl. And they also had a token brown boy. And they hired me as their token brown girl. But I experienced not only sexism, I also believe it was racism. My managing partner, or my supervising attorney, was a white woman who in the beginning was trying to be my friend, but soon I realized she didn't want me there because she felt maybe competition, I don't know, because there weren't that many women, right? She would make comments like, oh, are you sure you're gonna have to stay late today? Make sure you ask your husband and let him know you're gonna have to stay late at work today.
Fucked up.
Yeah.
That's just fucked up.
And you know, the ironic thing is that I worked for a workers' compensation defense firm. They gave me a crappy desk. My wrist started hurting. So 2 months in, I told them I need a standing desk, or I need something to help, you know, prevent a work compensation injury. And so she came into my office and she said, oh, I hear you got a standing desk. you should consider going to the gym. There's a gym down the street, the Equinox. It's a little pricey, so make sure you ask your husband if it's okay for you to spend a lot of money at an expensive gym.
Oh, hell no. Oh, hell no. Sorry.
And so when there were opportunities of growth for me, rather than take me, she was my supervising attorney, rather than take me to these events where there's opportunities for growth, she would take the token brown guy with her instead. And so I was only there maybe 5 months maximum because I did not want to be in such an environment. And so then I went and started on my own practice. So I don't have a lot of experience working with other people because I've always been so independent, but the limited experience that I do have was not a very positive one. And I know that a lot of other Latina lawyers feel the same way. And there's a lot of like the feeling of imposter syndrome, you know, like, do we belong here? And just like about, oh, well, we don't have the capacity to work at big firms. Or do the corporate world, and that's a feeling that a lot of people of color have, and it's something that I think it's going to keep happening, unfortunately.
Thank you, Carolina.
So I would say the thing that stands out the most to me, as well, being in like the legal field, is I actually went to court with James on this case. And it's funny that I feel I get more of the microaggressions or the diminutive type of comments are from women, white women in particular, usually, than I do from their male counterpart. So I went to court with James on a case that him and Mr. Burris and another attorney had, and it was me and then another Latina attorney that was helping. She was a brand new attorney. And we go into the courtroom, and the courtroom's pretty filled. It's jury selection. And so we're sitting right behind the lawyer's desk because there's only 3 people that can fit at the desk. And she, the judge looks at us, and she's a white lady judge, and she says, Mr. Burris, can you please tell your secretaries that they need to make room? And I was like, that's so diminutive because
that was completely fucked up.
It was so crazy
because
it was very telling of how she was looking at us, given that she didn't know who we were. We never had to announce ourselves in court. And I was sitting next to another Latina who was an actual attorney, and you just referred to us as secretaries. You know, and it's like, it was just those moments. And it's funny because I had went to a panel, and there was a bunch of women of color talking about their experiences and how they were always looked at. And I know Angelica, and I know other people have mentioned that, you know, you're looked at as like the secretary, the paralegal, the client, you know, and it was funny because it was my first experience in a courtroom like that, where I was in front of a judge, and it wasn't even me, I was just there to help, but to be already taken down just because your perception of me was that I couldn't be in a position of power, you know, was kind of like disheartening. And it was just like, it really focused it in for me. And I knew I had felt certain microaggressions or like diminutive type of things from my law school peers. Like, I love to wear long nails. I love long nails. I always get my nails done. Right now, obviously, quarantine has us in a whole different area, right? But I love long nails, and I love red lipstick, and I wear it to work, and because I work in an office of color. They don't care if I go in being me. But I was in law school, and we were getting ready to argue our appeals, our briefs, and one of the girls was just like, do you wear those nails to work? And it's just like, well, they're on my hand. So yeah, I always wear them, when I go to work. And she's just like, oh, I could never do that. She's like, I have to wear them short and very professional. And she's like, but it's a thing for you guys, right? And I was just like, wait, who are you guys? Like, and how is this a thing for you guys, you know? So it's just that, those kind of things. And it was other things too. Like I noticed, like I have a friend who's really good looking. She's beautiful. And she wears, you know, and I think most women wear the dress. That's like the one regular sheath dress with a blazer. And she just happens to have a curvy body and she's Latina. And I noticed how she's hypersexualized when she wears the same outfit as someone who doesn't have that same body shape as her. But it was like they both look very professional. But I think because, you know, growing up Latina or Latinx, and you look on TV and we're very hypersexualized, and so are Black women, you know, and I think that ends up being part of the microaggression that our white counterparts don't realize that they have. And I know Betsy was talking about being spicy, or, you know, things that she can't wear because, you know, people look at you a certain way. And I think that really does come from the hypersexualization of the Latinx women, you know, being portrayed, especially in the media.
Thank you, Carolina. Valencia.
Yeah, I could definitely resonate with what Carolina was saying. I've had just several experiences. I was at an internship. I was literally wearing the same outfit that most of the other girls were wearing. I was wearing a skirt and a nice blouse, but I got pulled aside and into the boss's office and said that I needed to go home because I was dressed inappropriately. And I just happened to be a little bit more curvy than the other girls. And I went home in tears that day. And I think one of the other employees, it was actually a Latino man. He's had that talk with every Latina girl that's worked in this office. And I couldn't believe it, because I've always felt that I've taken any type of job I've been into, I've always been professional, never have tried to portray something else. And so I think that was one of the experiences I had. This was right after college. But I think one of the most things for me is when that was really eye-opening for being a Latina woman in the legal field, is one of my first interviews from right after I graduated law school. Actually, I passed the bar, and I applied for a firm which most of their clientele were Latinos, but they didn't have any Latinos lawyers there. So I would have been the first Latino lawyer there. But what my job position was basically a glorified assistant to the other attorneys. And one of the guy who hired me was like, we really, want you to basically keep the other girls in check. And he was referring to the receptionist, the two young Latina girls, a receptionist, who were answering calls and doing, when the clients were coming in, doing that initial intake. So I wasn't recognized for my value of now being an attorney, a licensed attorney. And I literally did not, literally had to put in my notice of like, this is not, this is not appropriate. This is not what I worked so hard to do. And also the pay was significantly lower the other attorneys getting paid in the office. So I kind of took those experiences in stride and really wanted to aim for offices that were more diverse and inclusive. And so that's just something that I did not want to endure, and didn't believe I deserved to be in that type of environment. So since then, I've been fortunate to kind of, the firm that I work in now is like women owned, and mostly women staff and more diverse. And so I've physically am putting myself in those environments. I feel that I can strive in those environments, and those are the uplifting work environments that I want to be in. So I think that when after graduating college and after graduating law school, it took a while to kind of figure out where I was going to be accepted. And it's just sad that you have to have that conversation with yourself. You have to go through those experiences to realize that, you need to go look for the diverse jobs that you're going to be accepted at. And so I think that's eye-opening. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Valencia. Julia.
Yeah, so I touched on a little bit as far as what you wear to the work and like things of that nature. I honestly didn't know that there was another way that I could dress and still be considered professional until that first summer interning at the law offices of John Burris. Everything up until that point, the way that I was raised, my mom always made sure we had to have our hair had to be brushed always. We always had to have clean clothes. Everything was tucked in. Our shoes were clean and she would tell us that we would be looked at differently. We had to, act a certain way to get to where we needed to. So that was always in the back of my mind. And then as I got older, trying to deal with curves and those types of things, and what does that mean when I see this professional dress, but I don't know, does it still look professional? Why is it not professional if I wear it? Being told that I can't wear it, being told that I shouldn't wear it if I want people to take me seriously. And that was hard. But I didn't know that was wrong necessarily yet either. I was kind of like, okay, this is it. If I want to get to where I need to go, if I want to get a seat, as I saw it, a seat at the man's table, and be able to be a part of these big discussions and go where I want to go with my career, then I'm going to do these things. So I took it as instruction, and I was like, all right. And then when I finally get into law school and we're talking about suits, they're preparing us. It was primarily white women that they were doing this panel for, like, getting ready for internships basically, and what to wear and what to do. And ultimately they said that it had to be the stocking nylons, always. If you were going to wear heels, they had to be really small. You can never show your toes. If you were going to have nail polish, it was going to be nude, like shoulders covered. Everything is like kind of neutral colors, no form-fitting skirt, not pants. And I've heard stories about, judges asking why these women are wearing pants. Why didn't they wear their skirt? And that's like, I wasn't going to sit there and have that be my first experience in the courtroom, was having a judge tell me something about my pants. So either way, I wore it. And when I started interviewing for internships, it was primarily white men. And it seemed like the conversation wasn't really about my experience or what I wanted or what I could offer them. It was just very general, as if like, it was just, I don't know. I don't even know why I didn't feel like I was being interviewed for whatever it was, the internship. And these are legal internships. It felt like he was looking at me just differently, that I was going to add something to this office. I'm not really sure what it was. Like the fact that they had clients, it was for the public defender's office, I believe. They had clients who were Latinos, and that's really good. And it's like, that's great. So it was just very interesting to have that understanding of where they came from, and where that was coming from, I should say. But then that first summer when I went, I realized that it was okay to be me and still be professional and can still be respected and do what I need to do. But that also, it doesn't change the fact that there's going to be those obstacles along the way in this field, and what that will come. As far as if there is a judge, if I decide to wear pants, or I do wear my lipstick. I like wearing lipstick. I like doing my makeup. And I was told I shouldn't do a lot of makeup because it's too much. You're going to look too chola. Like they didn't want that in there. And so I kind of like tried to shy away from it and do like neutral colors. And it's been interesting. So still trying to navigate that still. It still feels uncomfortable, to be honest, when I'm getting ready for work. I'm very aware of it. It's just something I'm dealing with, I guess, in general. As far as like microaggressions and those things, I think going with like the Latina and how it's perceived, like, I guess maybe across towards men at times too. I'm short, I'm 5 feet tall. So that's already kind of its own little shocker for people when I like walk in. There's always comments usually from men about, oh, that's so cute, or that's adorable, or in these professional settings. And I feel very passionate about the work that we do at this firm and the work that I get to be involved with. And I get fired up. I can't help it. Like it's wrong, it's upsetting, and I feel like I can make a difference. And to have, you know, older men, and to some degree look at me and say that that's, oh yeah, you know, like you're Latino, like that's feisty, you're feisty, like that's so adorable, your fire's adorable, like those types of things. It's, you know, some of those, it may, sometimes it's not, it's sexism, sometimes it is, you know, there's a little racism in there, but either way, it's just very belittling, and it's almost like it just doesn't work. I'm like trying to figure out those parts too. So a lot of this is kind of newer to me, because I always felt like I had to be in check. Always. And I knew what that was. I couldn't wear dark colors. I couldn't really wear, my mom never let us buy white or black hoodies because she was afraid of what that was going to come off of to other people. And I think I just bought my first like fully colored black hoodie like this year. So I just, and that's crazy. These are just little things that are still coming up, and I'm still trying to figure out how it works.
Thank you, Julia. Ayana.
I think I would be largely repetitive. I took that woman's advice from the World Trade Center, you know, in stride, but I always just, I feel comfortable, you know, when I feel pretty. And, you know, I feel that's probably a different conversation, like a different topic, like, because then I get the acknowledgement of like stares or looks or whistles. I'm older now, so I don't get as many whistles, but at least back then, so it makes me feel powerful. And when I would walk into a courtroom, that's how I want it to form. It makes me feel good. It makes me feel empowered. And so I just go with it. And I've been able to compartmentalize if I'm hearing comments, that's their shit, not mine. But it's what I need. But for sure, I've you know, I'm at least aware of it. The other thing I think, a microaggression I feel is in court, bring the judge still rule against me, because I think it's hard to accept the truth coming from me. Like it's that you know, my experience has been that some judges just trust people who look like them. And so, especially when I'm coming in, I've always been an appellate attorney, and there's a certain aura about appellate attorneys that all we do is sit and research. So we are at least usually correct on the law, and it's not so much about advocacy and trying to get you to change your mind. And so I practiced in Georgia, and I lived in Atlanta for a bit. And in Atlanta, the DA has an appellate division, even though it's within the county. Here in California, all appellate work for the state is done through the Department of Justice. So I work for the Department of Justice here. When I moved to Georgia, I actually worked in the county district attorney's office. And the trial attorneys would call us, and they'd be like, I can sense this judge is about to rule against me. Can you come down here? And, you know, run down to the courtroom and try to explain to the judge, no, if you rule this way, it's wrong. I'm going to appeal you. You are going to get overturned. That's going to be embarrassing. Like, like trying to really put it on their mind. And it would be so hard for them to believe it, to trust me, to trust that I know what I'm talking about. And several times they would, even with the threat of being overturned and being embarrassed on paper by your colleagues, they would still go with opposing counsel, who I could clearly show them, you are wrong. They are wrong. Their position is wrong. They just couldn't get there. And I know that there's a whole, within the legal community, there's a whole continuing elimination of bias part in our continuing legal education. Like we all have to take a few hours of internal bias training to try to learn this thing, and try to train yourself against your proclivity to do that, to just trust who the person that you're looking at rather than what's on what they're presenting to you. And so that is what I experience more so now than how I look And it could just be that I don't care anymore. But that is frustrating to me, that they really just can't get there. I had a professor in law school. She was a Black woman, and she was the business associations and corporations professor. And any of color were in her classes, and we were in awe, and we were rooting for her. Our everyone else, you could tell the white men in the class didn't trust it, and they didn't think that she should be teaching them this material. And she was a professor. I think she went to Harvard, and she did all kind of worked in corporate America. Her pedigree was proven by the time of her being a professor. So I put her example out there of, it's something that we can expect being underestimated and not trusted just by virtue of how we look. I feel, sad to say, I feel like this is something we can expect to encounter forever, in perpetuity, until other biases, everyone else's biases around us change.
To the next topic, some people came in late, and we should let them introduce themselves real quick. One of them is Kelly. I've known Kelly since I was a little kid, sat next to her in a homeroom the whole time. We're both out in California now. And if you could just real quickly just introduce yourself, Kelly. I knew her as Kelly Carney, but anyway, I'll let her introduce herself. She's doing great work for artists in the South Bay.
Thanks, James. Thanks for including me. And I just want to thank you all for sharing your stories. I've known James, were we in homeroom at Anwanton too?
I think so. Kelly Carney, James Cook.
Yeah.
And we sat next to each other.
So that's junior high and high school, and I'm really proud of you and the work you're doing. It's incredible. I'm in San Jose area, the South Bay, and run an artist residency. We have artists who come from around the world, all different disciplines, all different backgrounds. Our claim to fame is the table, where we all come together and sharing ideas. But I think an important project I want to give a shout out to today is called In Plain Sight. You can see the project on Instagram. And these are two of our artists, Rafa Esparza and Castles, who have been organizing 80 artists from around the world, across the country, to shine a light on the detention camps, the migrant camps that we have all over the country. These are incredible conversations. I love this sort of moment of intersection, and would love to dive deeper into what is that? What is it about being a woman? What is it about being a person of color? Thanks for including me.
Excellent.
It's nice to be here.
Thank you, Kelly. Quick, if you can take it off mute.
Hear you.
Yeah, go ahead, Manisha. Just real quick introduction. Manisha is a scientist. She studies genetics. She's a genetics professor. I know she taught my kids genetics when they were like 2 years old. Please, Manisha, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not a professor. I work in biotech.
I thought you were. Well, you were.
Yeah. I'm a biotech person. I side. But I do work on genetics. Still, I have not had a lot of these same experiences, which I think is interesting in certain ways, because I do look, I get mistaken for Latino a lot. And yet I haven't had a lot of these same experiences. But a couple things that you guys have said have really resonated with me. Yeah, the piece about not speaking Spanish, like I'm half Indian, and actually the only place I felt even remotely not accepted is in the Indian community, because I don't speak any Indian language. And it's a it's a big barrier, and I actually don't have like any Indian friends or anything. And well, I mean, I have like work friends and stuff, but because I like don't feel comfortable going to Indian things because I don't speak in any language. But yeah, the kind of stuff we were just talking about are just like, it's other people's shit. That's kind of my attitude about everything, and I feel like it's being the only woman, only person of color in the room a lot. Yeah, trying to remember it's other people's shit and playing within the rules is something I think, but I try not to think about too much.
Okay, thanks, Manisha. So I want to introduce John in a couple reasons. First of all, John, I've known John, also grew up with him, Minneapolis. Not really grown up. He's a little older than me, but I've known him since I was a little kid. I always looked up to this guy. He's actually, he doesn't know it, but he's my mentor. You know, he's definitely one of my mentors. He actually worked with me on my law school applications in the very beginning, and then was like, "Hey man, you got a chance to fight, man. You should go do this other sport." We played soccer together. So like Manisha, John is a huge soccer fan, and his kid, I'll let him talk about that. But the other reason why I want to introduce John, he's a really interesting guy. So first of all, he's got a pedigree, you know, like Ayana, in that, you know, he graduated from Harvard with Obama, right, from law school at the same time. So he's probably got stories about that. He's also initiated every type of like plaintiff's case as far as, you know, racial justice cases, specifically the education, you know, that type of thing. And I'll let him talk about that. But I know this about him. Made movies, he's written books, you know, like I'm trying to catch up to this guy. Never will, right? Dispute resolution, written some white papers about that and is really involved in that. And then, but recently, you know, John has another venture with his wife where they make online games. And the games, you know, I can see the future of these games. I mean, this is going to become a big deal. They're games about, you know, to explore issues of diversity and inclusion. And, you know, it's just interesting, like next level shit from John. But anyway, I'd like John just to quickly introduce himself and talk about it. And then so we can move on to the next topic though. But please, John.
Thanks, James. Actually, you know, I don't know what you were talking about. Just like, I just like started breaking out. I mean, I feel like over the last 3 decades, it's just what you're describing is what we're seeing and experiencing over and over again is this, you know, these biases, this exclusion, this sense of trying to protect power and oppressive systems. And it's really sad because it does so much harm to all the individuals involved. I can't say how many times I've been in front of a judge where, you know, it wasn't even how I looked, it was what I was saying. And maybe because of how I looked, what I was saying, the guy's like, you can't say that, you can't do that. And the judge turning to me saying, what do you want me to do when we catch the government, you know, in these just atrocious lies and cover-ups and the abuse, and nobody wants to deal with it. It's just pathetic. It's really sad. So yeah, so anyway, I don't want to get in your way because I'm really excited about the next session, the next piece. So I just want to hear more, but I'm happy to continue a dialogue with all of you, you know, in whatever way makes sense. So I just want to hear more. It's pretty awesome.
Great, thank you. We have to say goodbye to Ayana, who has to leave. So I just want to say thank you very much for joining us. And yeah, if anyone else needs to go, you can go now because it's 5 to, we're going to continue with some questions. But if you need to leave, you can leave because we're just about at noon. So I don't want anyone to feel awkward about having to stay if they cannot. I wanted to address Daryl's question to the group, which was, how can non-Latinx people show up as better allies? maybe 1 or 2 suggestions. So if people can offer something, that would be great. Who'd like to start? Julia, let's go with you first.
This is honestly an interesting question. I think I've never really had to think about like what that would be. I think a lot of like growing up has been not so much thinking that there was going to be people there to help you in that way necessarily. So it's kind of, this is definitely making me think about it. As far as like being an ally, I think maybe just understanding that there's so many like Latinx people that are just from all different backgrounds and different ways that came up, and not necessarily, you know, knowing that we don't all speak Spanish, or we don't all have, you know, big families or small families, or it's just, I think that we get kind of like locked into in the middle of things. And it's like right now it's really interesting that with like the detentions and all the things that are happening with immigration, it's really hard to like, it's hard to address it the way that the system is already like, the way that it's designed, especially around immigration in this country, but then also knowing that society kind of sees them as, you know, illegals, or, you know, and that's just, so it's not, that's not, there's not illegal, it's, you know, they're undocumented, and it doesn't mean that it's they, like they're human beings that came here. And I think getting kind of locked into this understanding where people don't really want to understand what's coming on in the struggles of that, and just assuming that if you do that, you're a criminal, you shouldn't have come here. Like there's a lot of understanding. And I think the patience of trying to hear people's stories and maybe wanting to hear more about people's stories is the first step to seeing the differences, but also the similarities, and feeling like we can connect together, because it's everybody's, you know, opinions, backgrounds. That's kind of how we're able to move forward and learn from each other. But I think until having conversations like this, where we're able to really have it open, people are interested in learning and wanting to know more, this is really like the first step of doing that. Because I've never had this experience, and I think it's really like, it's great to be able to hear other people's stories, but also see people that are interested in wanting to be there. So I think conversations like this are a really good way to start.
And Julia, before we let you finish, I would add on to Daryl's question. We're consider the forum that we're doing, and we're probably forging something new, by the way. But originally this was started because white people wanted to ask a black dude, really wanted to legitimately ask a black guy, like, and say, what is your perspective on this? To complement Daryl's question.
I think this whole interesting, like, I guess as far as like my background being very close to family, I'm fully Mexican, so my family's huge. We have lots of cousins, and actually come from a law enforcement background of family. So my half brother is a Santa Clara County sheriff. I have a cousin who's Stockton PD. I think these things, like there's a lot of like internal things that I know that I'm trying to navigate as well right now in this times, and being aware and learning things. It's really not easy. It's kind of coming to a point where I know that like my family doesn't really like that. Some of the family members, like they don't agree with what I'm doing and the work that I do. And it's, you know, it's really hard and upsetting that I have family that's, you know, I think that I don't believe that they're going to go out there and have this intention to be, you know, go kill people. But I also know that law enforcement has its own things that are deep rooted in there. And there is a lot of racism in there that are, you know, there's a lot of covering ups that happen. There's just a lot of stuff that like, that's bad within it. So to feel like I'm being pulled between picking family versus, you know, sticking up for what's right and fighting for things, as far as like this police brutality issues go, it's difficult. This hasn't been easy. I feel like I'm picking sides, and I don't know that there like should be a side to pick, but I don't even know if this is really answering your question. I just know that this is something that is affecting me so much right now. And when I chose to be a part of this firm, proudly and happily like to be here and humbled to be a part of it, it's just also has brought a lot of, I guess, harsh wounds and realizations of like my own family, that there is a lot of education that needs to happen just within our our own communities that, you know, trying to do that. So I think educating, like just trying to get people educated and things along those lines is a big step. Just as, you know, not knowing the Black history of this country. And, you know, I feel like that I didn't know a lot, and I'm still don't know a lot, and I'm trying to constantly educate myself. But that's my own background too. There's a lot of things I don't necessarily know about my own family struggles, or they, like when they came and what they did to get here. And I'm just barely starting to scratch the surface of those things. But it's important that I think that, you know, talking about it, finding out more, questioning it, it's important.
James,
That is awesome. What's that, Alice?
No,
Yeah,
and
I was going to say.
Angelica
going
was
over-
gonna say something.
Okay, we're hitting 1 o'clock, so we're going
No,
to continue.
12. We're hitting 12.
We're hitting 12, I mean. So we'll keep going because, you know, originally we wanted to get to some law and policy issues, but I mean, this is just as important, and I'm going to let Angelica go from there. So I'm just acknowledging that. You can jump off if you need to, but we'll keep going. We'll let the conversation take us where it goes. Angelica?
I want to address Daryl's messages, because I think the bigger question is not only how can white people become better allies, it's also how can other people of color become better allies. Like, there's a lot of anti-Black history in the Latino culture, and we can support Black lives and also support brown lives. And I think, as James said, the struggles of Black people and brown people are parallel. But just like we're asking for the defunding of the police, we want to ask for the abolition of ICE, because it's the same system. So the same system that killed George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, it's the same system that's killing brown kids, brown lives. So we need to, within our own culture, within our own families, within our own circles, educate our people that the anti-Black hurts us too.
And not only defund ICE, but, you know, defund the bullshit wall, defund the concentration camps at the border, right, so on and so forth. And let's continue talking about that. And then Alice was going to pose a question where I believe Valencia was going to talk extensively. But do we want to keep going with this question, Alice? I mean,
yeah, I was.
Alice is the adult in the room.
Valencia, did you want to add regarding how to be a better ally?
Yeah, I mean, I was just, I could comment on, I guess I know we're moving into more of talking about immigrant rights and the detention centers and just basically the attack on immigration right now. So I could go more into how to kind of be an ally in that movement. But if we wanted to touch on the policy, we can kind of do that first.
Either way is fine. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, in terms of just being an ally in this ever-growing attack on immigration right now, just under the Trump administration, immigration itself, to being a practicing immigration attorney, it feels like we are on a roller coaster. Every week there's something new or different that the government is trying to impose or change and really limit the relief and benefits for the immigrants who are currently in this country and those trying to seek asylum. And so it's there's been a lot of and how to get involved in that, support that movement. There's a lot of legal services and organizations that are fighting this in the courts. So right now our biggest weapon against this is litigation, and litigating and trying to undermine these new rules that the government is trying to oppose. And there's some great organizations out there who are made up of pro bono attorneys doing this pro bono. So if you want to find out more about that organization, you could, or donate to those organizations. Some of those is the American Immigration Council, the National Immigrant Justice Center, Families for Freedom, These are organizations that are Butterflies Without Borders or Mariposas Sin Fronteras. These are the organizations that are on the ground there and trying to, change and fight against these new laws that are really limiting relief for immigrants. And of course, this goes into tale of calling local and state politicians, trying to get sanctuary cities still protected, educating yourself and your community regarding immigrant rights. And just how, I know Daryl brought that question, it's just like, what about undocumented citizens who received citizenship and have done kind of like the legal process, and now they're kind of facing some type of like negative sentiment of those who are trying to buy way through the process and come here illegally in a sense. But I think it's everyone who immigrated here. Back then, there was just a lot more programs that allowed people to come here and get jobs and get legal work authorization. Now those programs literally don't exist. So for people who are coming from Central America and Mexico and trying to find a better life and just better lives for their families, flee gang persecution, poverty, and all those things, those programs are not available. And so their only opportunity is to come to the border to seek asylum. And a lot of people coming to the border without documentation their purpose is to get caught by border control so they can be put in the system and really have their chance to explain or have their chance to seek asylum. But that chance is being stripped away by the Trump administration, and immigrants are forced to remain in Mexico or remain in detention centers pretty much, it seems like, indefinitely until their cases are heard, and there's a huge backlog. So it's a mess right now, and we're just trying to navigate this ever-changing world and how we can be advocates for the immigrant community. And it just seems like every week we have to educate ourselves on new law and what we can do as advocates. So that's kind of the state that we're dealing with right now.
Thank you, Valencia. Who has to leave? Carolina, do you have any parting thoughts on this topic before you leave?
So I have obviously personal experience coming from a Mexican household with the immigration system in certain ways. I mean, I'm a U.S. citizen, but parents, family, my fiance himself. So what I think is the way I feel about people that have become U.S. citizens and have an issue with thinking that other people should take their legal route. I think even myself was really ignorant to the process. It's something that I'm trying to get into now. I've been volunteering, and through my volunteer work, helping people fill out their citizenship papers, helping write asylum memos, I realized that I was really ignorant to different Latinx or Latin, what am I going to say, from different countries, different Latin countries, those people's struggle in itself. For me here, ours is always we come here undocumented and we try to do a citizenship that way. But I wasn't really too aware of asylum seeking. It wasn't something in my family. It wasn't something that I dealt with. One of my best friends is from El Salvador. Her whole family applied for asylum, and that's how they're here. And to understand how that was, and even just the process of, Cubans, when they come here, it's a different process. It's they have a different benefit. And I think that all of those backgrounds create the mindset on how we feel about the immigration system. So I feel like when somebody comes here and they have an easier way of getting legal citizenship, it tends to tint their perspective on the immigration system itself and not realize that there's so many facets, and it's so hard for other people coming from different backgrounds and different experiences that they just tend to think that everybody can do it just this one way because they did it that way. And I realized that even in myself and even in my community, I know that we don't always pay attention to the people on the outside that have other experiences as well. And I think that sometimes ends up being where our ignorance shows when it comes to legal citizenship here and those that are undocumented and trying to get citizenship, if that makes sense. At least that's my perspective on it. And then I was thinking about how to be an ally how that comes. I think that is just, informing yourself. I think even myself, it was just informing myself, educating myself, and seeing how the immigration system actually works and how it doesn't work. So that when people bring up the thing, though, they can just go and become legal citizenships. They just need to fill out the paperwork, understanding that some people wait 20 years for this to happen, and just letting your family know that it isn't just filling out a paper and taking it down to the immigration office and they're being like, oh yeah, you're good, let me clear you, stamp paper. Because in somebody's head, that's how that works. This is not the DMV. This is not how it works. It's not that simple. So I think it's to be an ally, it's just to understand, educate, and empower people, and allow that discussion to happen. Because I think that's really where allies, if you want to have a discussion around issues of people of color, immigrants, bring those people in, have them have that discussion, help them facilitate that, but let them be the leader to have those discussions, and then take what you learn from them and take that back to your family and educate your family. That's what I have to say. But thanks.
Thanks, Carolina.
Thank you, Carolina. That was awesome.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye. Are you there? Okay, maybe not. Okay.
Yeah, it just takes me a minute. Sorry.
Okay.
This is like a Zoom class too for me. I'm not used to it. So I think just realizing that someone, at least for me, being Latina, I come from a different place. Like being immigrant. My parents think different. Like my dad asked me, why is it taking you 3 years just to tell somebody to hold their breath? They didn't know what school was like. So as far as being an ally, just coming at me with that kind of attitude, oh yeah, she's coming from a different place, not a better place, not a worse place, but just coming from a different place. Yeah.
Thank
and,
you.
and Laura, do you have any sort of, well, real quick, Laura, do you have any anecdotal sort of things that you can offer? Anecdotal meaning personal stories about allyship that might help illustrate your point.
Well, for instance, at my job, there was this guy that had little figurines of homies, cholos. I guess they had a whole collection. And I was the only one that spoke up about it, because I didn't think that was a good portrayal of us, that would be the only portrayal of us. That's what really bothered me. Yeah, that's what really bothered me. And as far as what's that?
What was the race of the person who had the figurines?
He was white, and my manager was white. And my manager, when I spoke to him, I had to think, I wasn't used to, speaking up, because I never really had anything to speak up about at this job. So he was understanding. I explained to him that because I'm Latina, I didn't want the only figures and figurines to be, la shy girl, even though she was this small, but especially among my coworkers. So, if they had, a lawyer, like all these girls here that are lawyers, that's great. So, because like when I was in school, my teacher, I had one teacher who was teaching me, it was like a secretarial class to be a law secretary. And then years later, I was like, why wasn't she encouraging me to be a lawyer? Because that's what I really wanted to do, but then, I had a baby. Baby was at my graduation, but yeah, we never got encouragement, to be, something, higher. And my parents, they didn't know what was going on in school. I mean, they were thinking that we were getting, what we needed, and that we were going to have a better life than that's what they came here for, not because they didn't like their country, not because they were persecuted. We came in 1960 when we were still welcome. John F. Kennedy, he opened up the door for Latin America, and so it was, and we didn't have bilingual education, we didn't have anything like that, so my parents just thought that we were, just getting, what we needed to, My brother, he ran away from school when in first grade because the nun told him, "Oh, your name is John. It's not Juan." And so he was like confused and then left school, so just little things like that. And like when I've been married to Black men, and when I've gone to, offices, like if my husband would go to the window first and there was a Black girl attending him, he would get all kinds of service. But then when I would come up, it would be like, bitch, you like I stole him, like I kidnapped him or something, and just that kind of attitude.
Thank you,
We'll
Laura.
get into that.
Those are my stories.
We'll get into the education piece as well, John. So yeah, thank you, Laura.
Angelica, did you have something that you wanted to add?
Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks, Laura.
I lost my train of thought. I think I said a lot. I just said, education. I think that's the key to any allyship. A lot of people think, immigrants don't pay Social Security, they don't pay taxes, they don't do all of that. So you need to get educated, because undocumented immigrants are putting a lot of money that they're never going to see into the Social Security administration. And also, as Julia mentioned, the language is important. Using the term illegal is offensive and it's wrong. So, when you're referring to undocumented immigrants, they're undocumented, they're not illegal. And I think language is really important.
Thank you very much. Anyone else have any parting comments?
What about Julia? What about Julia? Did Julia speak? I don't think she commented on this.
I spoke a little about the allyship in the beginning. I do, I guess just add this final little thing is that I worked in a corporate immigration law firm before I went to law school. And that was not they're not the same systems. It is the same system, but it's not. I've never seen so many people that had, which is, great. They had an opportunity to come to this country to work, but they were also able to bring all of their family. They all got their documentation. The system was meant for them. And these are big companies like Yelp and Tesla, and they have their own immigration department in those companies to be able to help get people to come in from other countries to get these jobs, which is kind of so when people are saying that, oh, it's the undocumented people that are taking all our jobs and this and that, maybe, but not at the same time, maybe not, because there's people coming from all over, not just our southern border, that are coming to this country. And sometimes the system, it's not sometimes, it's very calculated. They're bringing in people openly and willingly to pay them hundreds of thousands of dollars for salary to start, and then bringing their whole family. And then now we see this flip side of it, where there's, a lot of the Latino communities that are being detained. They're trying to seek asylum. They're trying to get a better life, but they don't have necessarily something, I guess, how the country would see it, to offer, their work or their knowledge or their background. And it's it's a very skewed system. And I think seeing the corporate side of it, but then now seeing where we are, it's highlighted, it's magnified to some degree. It should be more, because I don't think enough people know what's really going on. But I just think that, to know that there is a system there, it does work for certain areas. If the country wants them to be here and how they will benefit to them somehow, then it will. So it's definitely a skewed experience, I think, and whole system in general.
So yeah, Alice, that's great, Julia. I'd like to get some just observations about this conversation from real quick from John, Daryl, Councilmember Davila, and Crystal if she wants to offer. But just so we can kind of close out, I don't want to say anything else. I'd rather let everybody else talk. Let's start with John.
Yeah, that actually, it's a really powerful conversation. I should tell you all, I'm actually living in Toronto, Canada now. My wife's originally from Haiti. We met in law school. She was actually Barack's classmate and good friend. And we decided to get out of the country with our 3 children about 15 years ago, lived subsequently in Uganda, India, Mexico, Brazil, and now Toronto. And it's just amazing to me, the difference here in Toronto, where we talk about, you know, language and education and expectations and different backgrounds. In Toronto, it's looked at as a huge plus to have all these different languages in a school, all these different cultures and backgrounds, public school. And everywhere I've ever seen in the US, they act like it's some burden. It's like, oh, you have to understand, we have so many people who have multiple languages spoken at home or whatever. I'm like, isn't that a positive? I mean, it's just bizarre how, you know, again, how we think about things. It's really, really important to get the right way of thinking about things, because if you look at everything as negative and all through this prism of control and power and white supremacy, you end up with a really confused sense of what's possible in the world. And that's to me is the biggest thing. And I just think this conversation is really important because these coalitions, we have to build these coalitions. We have to get people to understand what's being done to control their minds, and especially the minds of children. But that's kind of what I feel when I hear the conversation.
That's awesome. Thanks, John. Thank you.
Councilmember Davila, would you like to add your comments?
Sure. I just wanted to thank you all for having me here today, because this has been a really amazing conversation. I've learned a lot. My children are Guatemalan and Black, and they're often like, people don't know what they are and are always asked all these different questions like, who are you, blah, blah, blah. And me, like even in my family, my sister considers me a fair-skinned Black person, although I don't see that, but you know, I'm lighter than she. So, I mean, we all have these dynamics of different, you know, colorisms. So, but I feel we all have to be united in this day and time. Now is the time to change. Now is the time to do different, you know, change business as usual and stand up, speak up, rise up, because I don't know if we're ever going to have this opportunity again, especially with COVID, right? So our lives are totally different, and we have to move forward in a way different way. Defund the police, get rid of capitalism, you know, like get rid of racism for real this time, you know, get out there. I know we can't be out there on the street, although sometimes we just have to be. I've gone out there a few times, you know, but we have to take that opportunity and every opportunity that we can to make the changes that we want to see made. That's why I'm here. And I'll continue to fight for the people. And it's just amazing that all these amazing people on this call are all attorneys and so smart and so young. I mean, you are our future. It just gives me so much hope, you know, so thank you. Thank you, James, and thank you, Allison. Thank you for Crystal for having me here today.
Thank you.
And Councilwoman Dowell, I'd add that, you know, we can't be out on the street, but we got Zoom. And
we got Zoom,
you know,
right.
We're posting these conversations, and hopefully they will inform some of the policy, or at least support you in the struggles that you have. And you can show these conversations, say, look, this shit is real. Here it is right here. So
yeah,
I just wanted to point that out. All
Thank
right,
you.
Alice, I don't know. Thank you.
Crystal.
I don't know who's next.
Crystal, are you there? You're muted.
Crystal.
Let me see if I can unmute you. No, I can't unmute her. Okay.
Okay.
Daryl, you're up.
Daryl gets to close it out.
Oh man, first and foremost, I want to thank Valencia and Julia and Helica and everyone else who spoke. I've been just sitting back, taking all this in and learning really. Obviously there's a lot of change happening right now, and I think as was just stated by John and by by Councilmember Davila. I think, it's on all of us to lean in a bit and make sure that we're learning and educating ourselves, because we all know that the school system isn't designed to teach us the truth. This country was not founded for pretty much anyone on this call. If you weren't wealthy and white and a man when this country was created, it wasn't for you. You didn't even have a vote, if you didn't have some land. So through all the struggles, we've gotten to a place where we can vote, where we can have these conversations, where we can affect change. But I just want to thank you all for sharing. And I'm really like I was just hearing it gives me hope to see, young, passionate, powerful women and men stepping up to the mic and taking the leadership and bringing their experiences along with them. You look at an AOC, she's unapologetically herself, and it's gotten her the mic. Like, love or hate her, she's got the mic, right? And the people that are following her, the others are following some other status quo. But I think having these intentional conversations and being grassroots and supporting each other, more importantly, when we step up, is what's going to affect the change and make us all a little bit better in the long run. So I want to just thank you all for sharing your stories and educating me and others along the way. I'm here for it. I got your back 100%.
Right on, man.
Thank you, Daryl. So thank you very much to our panelists, Valencia, Julia, and Halika. And then thank you also for everyone who came and joined to become part of the conversation and also to get better educated. And it's like a pebble dropping in the water. It creates ripples. So we are the center of that ripple, and hopefully the knowledge that we gained here, the understanding that we gained here today, goes further beyond this, partially by sharing this video and partially by sharing the knowledge that we gained today. So thank you so much for attending.